Okay, so it's been completely stitched across and now we're ready to wash this. I've just got a little tub of water here and I'm just going to show you the dissolving part of this background piece in the water, and you can see all the colours become beautifully stitched down and everything's gorgeous in that first glimpse of seeing what it looks like when it's been washed. So that's now dissolving off. I can still feel a little bit of the gluey sort of surface, which needs just a little bit of washing. And once I can feel that all dissolved in the water, it's pretty good now, I will then take that piece and roll it up on itself just to protect that surface a little bit and wring it out. So not being too gentle with it because now it's our new surface. I'll just move that out of the way. Try not to make too much mess. Okay, so now I've got a towel here and I'll just roll that up in a towel and it will start to dry quite quickly. Often in class we'll get them and we'll iron the back of them just to keep going and get a bit of moisture out. But if you wring it really well and set it to dry, it doesn't take too long. But you can see all that gorgeous background colour all sitting there nicely now, and we've created our background. So as I said before, I've prepped for this workshop, so I have one prepared already, and here we are, one I prepared before. And we'll continue on with our flower applique now. So this is the background I've prepared. It's all nice and ironed up, ready to go, dried and ironed, ready to go. I usually iron them from the background, from the back area, so that I don't, burn any of the extra bits and pieces on the surface. Okay, so we have a pattern for the flower and the leaves and the stem, and so that's the little pattern sheet that I've used to get our designs from. And here we are. I've ironed up the poppy fabric that I've chosen to use for this workshop, for this project, and I've pressed that stabilizer onto the back of it again, so you'll notice that everything I use has this backing on it, so it's nice and stable. Okay, so I've cut out the flower paper pattern and I've pressed pinned that to the front of the red fabric, and I cut that out. Okay, and I've done the same with the green, so I've stabilized the back of it with the violin stabilizer, and then I've pinned my leaf design pattern to the front onto there so that it's ready to be cut out, ready to go. Okay, and those two things have been done, and here we are. We have our patterns cut out, our designs cut out. So we have our poppy and our leaf cut out, ready to go from the fabric. Now I've also used some pen, and I've just put a few little marks on here to correspond with the petals on the flower, just to give myself a little guide when I get to the machine, so that's just a little bit of an extra guideline. I can also do the same in our leaves, just a little stem line with a few little markings. Okay, and there we go, we're ready to use that as an applique. So I will get now my background again, and I will start to arrange that onto my background, and then place my flower however which way I choose. I always encourage everybody to take some artist license and play with things, absolutely play with things to make them their own. So here we are, we have our placement down, 2 appliques, and now I'm pinning it into place. The reason you might be thinking, why don't I use a fusible stabilizer to put on the back of these, and why don't I trace them and cut them that way? I use less of the glue as possible. So I have the stabilizer on the back of the fabrics and they aren't going anywhere. They're big shapes as well. They don't take a lot of tracing. So I try not to use the fusible if possible, but it's not that I can't always do that if the pattern's a little bit more intricate. With this textured background, I'm finding now that there is getting a build up of layers, and sometimes it's a lot easier just to have less glue in there to start with. Okay, so I've got everything ready now to start the thread painting. So my little design's pinned on and it will be ready to start stitching. Okay, I have the red thread, and now I've chosen to put a deeper red thread on it because I want to see where I'm stitching. I want to get, you know, bang for the buck basically. But I do sometimes say in class, if you're not really confident in stitching the first time round, use the thread colour that's very similar to the red that's there. And then you can go back with an accent colour later on. Okay, so I needle down and start stitching. I'm starting from the centre because with these stabilizers going together onto these heavy fabrics, it will start to give it a little bit of shape as well. You'll notice, I think, in the original sample, you know, the petals seem to sit up a little bit, and that's because of the stiffening in the fabric as well as the amount of stitching I've put around it. So you can see there's a lot of stitching here around these areas, and then again around all of the applique to finish those edges. So the movement of the machine is just a short back and forward movement and following the line as best as possible, so that you build up a layer and a line of stitching, and that becomes then the design line in the applique. Hoping you can see it well enough. Okay, so back and forward, just little steps at a time, meandering around the applique so that you can then get a line of stitching that will define some of those shapes. Okay, so that red has been stitched all the way around. Okay, and you can see there's a little bit of contouring happening, which is lovely for the thickness of the fabrics and the amount of stitching that I've put onto there. Now I'm just going to thread the machine again in black so I can then show you that centre. I'm going to leave the green at this point and then get onto the black, because the green stitching will be exactly the same as the red, obviously in green. And I just want to talk to you about the centre. Okay, so just setting that aside for a moment and coming back to our pattern, I want to talk to you about how to use water soluble, just in another way of using it as a tracing for the applique for decoration. So I've got a little piece of, another piece of water soluble that I've now placed over my pattern, and because I can see through it, I can trace, the pen works, through that, and then trace all of my design lines. Okay, so that's sort of what I would do then, and I end up with this little water-soluble drawing of that center of the flower. Trim off a little bit of that excess, you can see a little bit of that excess water-soluble fabric, and we have this little drawing of the center of the poppy. And it just, you may not need to do this, but it just gives you the option. Okay, I'm trying to encourage everybody to have a go and find ways of, you know, achieving outcomes so that they'll keep coming back to have more play with their textiles. Because if it's not fun, or if it's not, you know, achievable, sometimes you won't always come back to enjoying it more. So I've pinned that to the center of the flower now, and there'll be these photographs step by step in the pattern sheet instructions, so that's all there as well. So now I've got black on the machine, black thread. I'm going to go in and I'm going to follow the lines that I drew with the pen. And this takes a little bit more practice, but honestly, it is just a following the line. And if you go off a little bit, well, honestly, it just looks like another stamen, doesn't it? So then I'll go in that center area, and then I'll come out to this further in the center there. And then I'll start doing my stones. And they're short back and forward movements again, and then staying on that end to do that little ball in the one spot, holding the machine just for a little bit. You'll find you'll feel it getting thicker and thicker, and then you can move on. So one at a time, going around and just continuing to fill that center of the flower with those beautiful poppy stamens. As I said, there's step-by-step photos in the pattern sheet, and some of the instructions that you've heard here today as well. So it just refreshes you know, we all learn differently. I'm a visual learner. You can notice I teach visually with all the samples and the process. But even sometimes just reading some of the words helps in the learning and the understanding. So I'm getting around that now. And we have the stamens done. Okay. And obviously this green on the leaves would be all stitched as well on the edge, just like I did the red round the flower, down the stems and round the leaves, and just into the leaves with the stems of the leaves. But this here is actually quite an interesting process of using that water soluble, tracing on it and using it as a tracing to put it into your work, because this will dissolve still. Remember, that will dissolve in water. So what I do now is I would get my towel and I will dampen that towel so that I can then show you that this will just disappear. Okay, and there it is. We have a design stitched into our, it's a bit dark because it's wet, but it will dry lighter, and you can see, you know, from our finished poppy, we get that process of having this center of the flower. So that's our poppy flower process for making that. In the kit you have the fabrics, the full fabric kit has the fabrics, the instructions and the pattern. The only thing you have to really bring is your machine and your threads and your sewing needs. There's also an option to just get the pattern and instructions with the stabilizer and the water soluble. I put that in there too because it's not always easy for some people to find. So that's the process of what we've got in the shop. Okay, so I've loved making this little project and I hope you all enjoy it as well. This is my passion, making this fabric texturally, pattern, colour, laying it down, creating something totally unique that you'll never be able to make again because it is totally unique the way we lay it down. I hope you'll enjoy making it, and I look forward to next time sharing the classroom with you and making something exciting. Enjoy.